Welcome. Let's talk about Monday Night Raw, November the 18th, 2024. This was a taped episode of Raw, so much of it was already spoiled. I'm going to try to truncate this review, which means I'm probably going to keep it to, 30 minutes if I can. I just want to talk about some of the major points. I don't want to talk about everything. One of the points I do want to discuss is the women's War Game match, which they have set up as Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, Nia Jax, Tiffany Stratton, and Candice LeRae versus Naomi, Jade Cargill, Bianca Belair, Io Sky, and Rhea Ripley. I don't get this. I don't understand this. It's not needed. I know that in the modern world, they tell us that, women are equals and that if men do it, women can do it too. But they also told us in a wrestling context that we don't need to have these scheduled events where we try to force a Hell in a Cell match in a situation that doesn't involve a Hell in a Cell. It doesn't need it. Remember, they wanted to get rid of the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view because, well, just because it's October doesn't mean we need to have a Hell in a Cell match. And I agree. Just like, it's December, that doesn't mean we need to have a TLC match. I get it. But that also applies here. Just because we have a Survivor Series does not mean we need to have 2 War Games matches. This could have been perfectly fine and have been far more understandable as a traditional 5-on-5 Survivor Series match. That's one of my big problems with this. I got 2 big problems. That's the first one. You could have just did this as a 5-on-5 Survivor Series match. They do those match all the time. Not a big deal. The second issue I have here is Liv Morgan and Nia Jax. They just fought 3 weeks ago. Now they're pretending like they're going to be on teams and they're, not best friends, but they can work together. And it's like, are we just assuming that just because they have mutual enemies that they can all just work together? It's a hodgepodge on the other side. You got Io in there, and then Rhea making a rapid return. I'm just like, what is going on? This does not need... Look, from a storyline perspective, Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan both captaining, I guess you could say, Survivor Series teams. Makes sense. This, traditional Survivor... in a traditional Survivor Series match. It was no different than Hulk Hogan having a team and Andre the Giant having a team, and it could just be anybody in it. But in this War Games situation, it's nonsense. We don't need another War Games match. This feud between Liv Morgan and Rhea Ripley, that may be a match you put inside of a cage. But Liv and Nia Jax were just partners. Nia gets nothing out of this. Oh, well, she gets to fight Naomi. She just beat Naomi. So why does she care about fighting Naomi? Why would she care about getting involved with Rhea Ripley? I know that she's kind of been tangentially related to Jade Cargill and Bianca Belair, but now her business with Naomi is over. She can actually just fight them. I'm not going to say they haven't done a good job of making sure all of these players have touched each other at some point and that these players have not been commingling at some point. That's not true. It's not true that this is thrown together. There's actually some threads of story here with all of these different people feuding with each other and having unique relationships, etc., etc. My point is, just because that's the case does not mean this needs to be a War Games match. These are not factions. War Games was, a faction versus, usually a heel faction versus a cadre of heroic baby faces who might be mismatched. All right. But they're baby faces, so they're, they have this alliance. That doesn't work if you're just going to do it for both sides. It doesn't work. So I don't like this idea. I think it's dumb, but nobody's going to listen to me. They're just going to keep slurping on Papa H. That's unfortunate. We're going to talk about the Miz. So they did the segment with the Miz and Karrion Kross, and then we're going to talk about the later segment with Uncle Howdy / Bo Dallas. So the Miz and Karrion Kross, they do a segment where the Miz is discussing the emotional ride he's been on for the last couple of weeks. And he ends up saying that he deserves an Oscar for his performance because even Timothée Chalamet has never bled for his art. And then, of course, it was all a trap to get the Wyatts in the ring. And Kross said that he's not afraid of the Wyatts, that they aren't invincible, and that he deals all the cards and they're just playing his game. I thought this was a brilliant segment. There's a lot of positivity that's coming out of this segment. A lot of it towards Karrion Kross for obvious reasons, that he finally is getting a lot of attention. He's finally starting to get a reaction. And I say this is that Miz magic. This is the Miz. The Miz is like salt. If you put him on something, it's immediately better. All right? You put the Miz with Karrion Kross, instantly better. It's been going on for 15 years now. You take the Miz and you put him with something that you actually like. On his own, maybe you don't like him that much. But if you take the Miz and you put him with Johnny Nitro, he enhances Johnny Nitro. You put him with Aaron Stevens or Damian Sandow, he increases that guy. He makes that guy better. You put him with Alex Riley, he makes that guy better. You put him with Bryan Danielson, he makes that guy better. This is what the Miz does. This has been his great usefulness this entire time. No, he's not going to turn into Luthez ever in the ring. At this point, you should give up on the fact that the Miz is going to become some kind of super hyper competent pro wrestler. That's not going to happen. But as a personality, as a Bobby the Brain Heenan sort of personality that he can increase you, well, the Miz is perfect. He's perfect. And now it's working. Now he's got people interested in Karrion Kross. I like Karrion Kross. I've always liked Karrion Kross. I liked him when he was in MLW. I liked him in TNA. I liked his first run in NXT where everybody was saying that he sucked because they wanted more, Johnny Gargano and Adam Cole running around in circles for 35 minutes. I liked Karrion Kross. Always did. Adding Miz to Karrion Kross makes me like Karrion Kross more. And the Miz, you can look at him and say that he's being sort of a bit player to Karrion Kross. Karrion Kross still comes across like he's the boss here. Like, it is like two Batman villains working together. And there's Bane, and then there's I don't know who would Bane work with that wouldn't cost too many. Let's just say the Penguin or something, okay? Even though I don't think that would fit. But the Miz he's there as a B villain in this situation, but he's enhancing Karrion Kross so much that people are going to start thinking that Karrion Kross is over on his own. It's the Miz. Okay, it's the Miz. So, Bo Dallas, who's starting to look more and more like Bray every week. As a matter of fact, he looks so much like Bray now, I don't ever really need to see him ever wear that Uncle Howdy mask. You can call him Uncle Howdy, but he should never wear that silly mask with the fake hair. It looks ridiculous. Nobody really understands it. Whatever significance it had was in relation to The Fiend and Bray Wyatt, but now The Fiend and Bray Wyatt are gone. So you can still do your Bray Wyatt tribute act as Bo Dallas. Change his name, clearly. You don't want the Bo Dallas stink all over this guy. Call him Bo Wyatt or something like that. And let him do this character this way without the makeup, without the mask, and without that silly hair. But he cuts this promo. He targets the promo specifically on The Miz, saying that an innocent's trust is a liar's weapon, that he offered The Miz salvation, and he threw that in his face. He says now he's damned himself. He apologizes for what's going to happen next, and says that The Miz is going to lose what matters most, which tells me that there's probably going to be some involvement from Maurice and the kids, because I would imagine that's what matters most, right? So I'm very, very interested in this now, and I've kind of been harsh on this whole Wyatt's thing. As harsh as people have been on Karrion Kross, I've been as harsh on the Wyatts. It's not that I dislike Bray Wyatt or dislike this gimmick. It's just I feel that it's in the way, in so much as we all miss Bray Wyatt. It was a great gimmick, great character, great opportunity. I don't really need to see a tribute band. I'm not really thrilled about that. But this makes me intrigued. Now, when you look at this is a solid 4-on-4 kind of situation. This could be a traditional Survivor Series match. Now, I have seen people online say this should be the War Games match. The Final Testament plus The Miz versus the Wyatt Six. I will say no to that. We don't need a second War Games match. We don't need a first War Games match, if we being honest. But if we gotta have a War Games, then the Bloodline continuing to fight each other is fine, because at least it's a set stable versus a cadre of baby faces, which is a traditional War Games way of doing things. But this as a traditional Survivor Series match, the Final Testament versus the Wyatt Six, I like it. And it's a good way to get a bunch of people on the card, and to give people who like Survivor Series something to be interested about in when it comes to Survivor Series. A longer match where there's a lot of pinfalls and submissions. You could tell some stories. Maybe you don't want to pin certain members of the Wyatt team, which is stupid, because why wouldn't you want to pin Joe Gacy? Why are we protecting Eric Rowan from pinfalls? But there's a story you could tell there with a 4-on-4 or a 5-on-5 scenario that could be fun. I would imagine it had to be a 4-on-4. That could be fun. So I'm definitely interested in this. I guess we have to talk about Bron Breakker and Sheamus. Their match was a good match. I figured since it was on a taped episode, some shenanigans would happen. And it got busted up by Ludwig Kaiser, who attacked Sheamus because he's obsessed with Sheamus all of a sudden. Ludwig Kaiser was motivated mostly by not just his hatred of the Mayonnaise Man, but his also being pushed by Gunther. It was actually a pretty good segment between the two of them, with Gunther saying that Ludwig Kaiser doesn't speak for him. Ludwig Kaiser needs to speak for himself. He needs to go out, figure out who he is, and start speaking for himself. And I thought that was pretty damn good. He said, basically told him to be his own man. And he talked to him in German, and it sounded like he said something about his father. And maybe I should have looked to see if somebody had translated it. But I got that he may have said something about Kaiser's father. And this led to Kaiser attacking Bron Breakker and Sheamus during this match. The match itself was pretty good. Of course, it was disqualification bait because it's happening on a taped episode of Raw. Bron Breakker, of course, is still phenomenal. I'm okay with Ludwig Kaiser. Kaiser and Breakker could be fun. Kaiser and Sheamus put on good matches too. I kind of feel like this is a waste of an opportunity. They're just prolonging this thing. Whether you like that or you don't, I don't know. I really don't have a strong opinion either way, because I think Bron Breakker should be doing more, but I think Sheamus is a solid opponent for him at the same time. And I think Kaiser's a solid opponent for him too. I just don't think that there needs to be two heels in this situation, because you're trying to get Bron over. You know, let Bron be the heel in this scenario. But you can't just have Bron Breakker on the show and then me not talk about him. But he's tremendous. So another thing I want to discuss is the main event. Seth Rollins versus Bronson Reed. Earlier in the night, Jay and Sami Zayn begged Seth Rollins to team up with them after Bronson Reed attacked the Bloodline, or the OG Bloodline, during SmackDown. They said, "Oh, you've put your differences aside before and done this." And Seth says, "Well, I would team with Jay. I would team with Sami. I will never, ever team with Roman Reigns ever again. Never, ever, ever again until Survivor Series." I put that in. You should put that in parentheses, because that's what's going to happen, right? So the match between Bronson Reed and Seth Rollins is immediately interrupted before the bell even rings, with all the bloodlines fighting. So everybody's brawling outside the ring, and that's pretty much that. The match then goes as normal, with Bronson Reed showing some level of agility and strength, kicking out of moves at one. You know, Seth Rollins having to do a little bit more. And then out of nowhere, here comes Solo Sikoa, cause a distraction. Bronson Reed hits a Death Valley driver, tsunami. He wins the match. Pinfall win, too. So he got his win back, even though it was by distraction. And I've always said that there's just too many people walking to the ring in WWE. It's one thing for a guy to jump out of the crowd, which, you know, Ludwig Kaiser jumped out of the crowd. I think Solo Sikoa jumped out of the crowd. But there's sometimes in WWE, just people just walking down the ramp to interfere in these matches. It's like there's interference in like every other match now. It's kind of ridiculous. But in this scenario, they set it up where Rollins loses because of Solo Sikoa. So he's going to want revenge. He's going to want to blame Solo for this. And they're going to keep begging and pleading until they get Seth Rollins into this match. Again, I want to reiterate what I said from SmackDown. I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of Seth Rollins and Bronson Reed being brought into this. I'm not a stickler as much as other people are that, you know, the Roman and Seth feud, you know, their Royal Rumble match leading to these two guys hating each other. Roman said he hates Seth, and of course him hitting Seth with the chair at WrestleMania rather than hitting Cody, which cost him the title, and all of that being undone. My thing is, yes, you can undo it. It's not an issue to undo it. It's that you just can't undo it frivolously. And it's being undone frivolously. It's not feeling earned. When you do something in a story, it should feel earned. If you're going to have a redemption arc for your characters, the character should earn redemption. The problem with this Bloodline story, at least as it sits right now, is that what I said before. You got Jimmy recruiting Jay. You got Jay recruiting Sami. And now you got Sami and Jay recruiting Seth. None of this has anything to do with Roman. And Roman is not putting himself on the barbecue and being judged and being attacked or even being humbled for all the things that he done. So it's not a legitimate redemption arc. And if you're going to trap people in cages and say you have to fight for this guy's team, there should be a reason for that. He should need you, and he should be apologizing to people. But I've already said all this stuff. You know, it's common sense that Roman Reigns has not earned the respect or the goodwill of anybody in this story. So why are they participating in this match? Now they have individual reasons, you know. Sami Zayn got his shit kicked in. Jay cost his Intercontinental title, and he got beat up. You know, Jimmy has been getting beat up for weeks, and of course Solo tried to kill Jimmy, and Roman is there because Solo has been beating him up all this time. And so the idea that they're going to bring everybody together because Solo has caused this problem, well, that's good heat for Solo, but it doesn't mean that everybody should want to participate, especially in pro wrestling when you could have your own match. You know, the idea that Seth Rollins just can't wake up tomorrow and decide to challenge Solo Sikoa to a singles match or challenge Jacob Fatu or Tongaloa or whatever to a singles match to get some measure of revenge and not have to team up with Roman Reigns at all. You could do a 6-man tag and never team up with Roman at all. You could do a tag team match and never team up with Roman at all. There has to be a reason why this particular match is the right match, is the right scenario for these two guys to put all their bad blood aside and do the job. They have not told that story. That story has not been expressed to us, the viewers. What we're being told is Solo's so bad, the band's got to get back together. And he ain't that bad. Considering as bad as Roman was, Solo ain't nowhere near. Nowhere near. Solo's been doing this for about 5 or 6 months. Compared to 4 years of Roman Reigns manipulating and abusing people, no mas. No mas. So that was the majority of Raw, the majority of the important bits of Monday Night Raw. The War Game stuff is baffling to me. Not just that, you know, Mongo hates War Games, but I think this has been the most sloppily built War Games event since they started doing them, and including NXT. They're just basically saying, well, it's Survivor Series, we got to have a War Game, so we're going to throw together some teams. Okay, well, you had the original Bloodline versus the new Bloodline. You didn't need to add Bronson Reed and Seth Rollins to that. You could have added them on the undercard in some kind of special street fight or something. They chose not to do that. You know, you don't need the women's War Games match at all. You could have that as a traditional Survivor Series match. And I don't see why you can't have a traditional Survivor Series match and a War Games match on the same show. And I'm not a person that believes that the War Games match is somehow the superior match. I actually think the War Games is a worse match than the traditional Survivor Series match. Because at least in the traditional Survivor Series match, there was more stories that you could tell. There was eliminations. There was all these sorts of things that you could do to elevate characters, to diminish characters, to do humor. There's a bunch of different things you could do in a traditional Survivor Series match that you can't do in the War Games match. It has more options, more opportunities. So I think that they're pigeonholing themselves by doing the War Games match. I think they're doing themselves a disservice by forcefully injecting the women into the War Games match and then forcefully injecting the War Games concept into Survivor Series. You know, this cancerous cell that's been attached to Survivor Series of like the past 3 or 4 years, at least it made sense when the Bloodline story, because they're a dominant faction, it makes sense. But when you don't have that dominant faction, you don't need this. That's why I'm okay with the Bloodline having a 4-on-4 War Games match, you know. But you don't need that women's one. You don't need that at all. I didn't talk about Gunther and Damian Priest because there wasn't much to say. It's not a lot going on there. It's just not a lot moving. It's a constipated feud. People give Cody a bunch of shit for not being a great world champion. Really, Gunther ain't much better, if we're being honest. They're booked almost the exact same way. So it's unfortunate, but that's the situation we live in. So that's my thoughts on Monday Night Raw. I'll talk to you guys later.